Welcome to the Record Stop. I'm your host for today, Alex Irwin, and I'm here to talk about the wonderful world of vinyl. On our last segment, I talked about the amplifier and what it does in terms of altering your sound. By introducing more electricity, it boosts your signal to a level that can be heard clearly and as intended. How to listen to your signal, though? That is the job of your loudspeakers. Before we can talk about the types of loudspeakers, we must go over how loudspeakers produce the sound you hear. Loudspeakers convert electrical energy into mechanical energy. They work in the exact opposite way microphones actually work. The electrical signal is sent into a coil of wire called the voice coil inside the loudspeaker's casing. There is a magnet ring around this coil. When electricity is sent through a coil, it generates a magnetic field. This magnetic field interacts with the magnet ring permanently installed around the coil. Like charges will repel each other, and opposite charges will attract to each other. As the audio signal is sent into this coil, the audio's waveform mimics the changes in electrical charge. And as the waveform goes up and down, the voice coil is attracted and repelled by the magnet. This creates a back and forth motion. So the voice coil is going back and forth now. How does that make sound? Well, at the end of the voice coil is a piece called the cone. It's the circular part of the speaker that looks kind of like a flattened cone. It slightly bends in towards the speaker housing in its center. It's often covered by a sort of cloth or metal mesh on home entertainment speakers and mobile speakers. But on high-quality speakers, you can often see the cone itself. As the coil moves back and forth, the cone also moves back and forth. The cone's motion creates pressure waves. If you remember from a previous segment, the sound we hear is the compression and contraction of air molecules. These pressure waves are exactly that. The cone compresses the air in front of it, changing air pressure and creating a sound wave that our eardrums can interpret. All of these components are situated inside the loudspeaker's housing. And boom, you have a fully functioning loudspeaker. But there are two types of loudspeakers you need to be aware of before you implement them into your setup. That is the passive and active loudspeaker. The difference between these speakers is where the speaker crossover network is situated and how they obtain power. The crossover network was developed to better reproduce lower and higher frequencies by splitting them up and sending them to different drivers, or different mini loudspeakers inside the loudspeaker housing unit. This would include the woofer and tweeter, respectively. I will talk more about these components in another segment, but for now, it is important to understand the crossover network is when the signal gets split into two, one for the higher and lower frequencies. For a passive speaker, this happens at the amplifier stage. Therefore, passive speakers need an external amplifier to power them and to split the signals. For an active speaker, the amplifier and crossover network is actually situated inside the speaker housing itself. Therefore, it doesn't need an external amplifier to work. There are actually separate amplifiers inside the unit that handle the woofer and tweeter signals respectively. This specialized attention to the signals by the amplifiers actually results in a richer amplification and a richer sound. These speakers do need a power source though, so you'll have to plug these types of speakers into a power outlet. The choice between an active or passive design to your turntable setup is up to preference. With an active design, you often get a better sound right out of the gate and a lot less equipment you have to manage since there's no external amplifier. But in a passive design, you can customize your rig a lot easier and set your audio preferences exactly as you want them. And that is how loudspeakers work. They're essentially just microphones working in reverse, pushing air and compressing it to create the sound waves we hear. We also discussed the difference between an active or passive system of loudspeakers. Depending on which pair you get, your turntable setup can vary in terms of components needed. On the next segment, I'll teach you all about loudspeaker placement and the technicalities of loudspeakers, such as frequency response, the woofers, and the tweeters. See you at the next stop.